In this week's video, I'm going to show you guys how you can make moody R&B beats for artists like PartyNextDoor, Bryson Tiller, or Drake in FL Studio. And before we get started, I gotta apologize for missing last week's upload. I don't know if you guys can tell by the sound of my voice, but I'm getting over COVID and it was really just kicking my ass all week last week. So I'm sorry I didn't get a video upload for you guys last week, but we're back and we're going to keep going strong. Before we get started, I'm going to play a quick preview of the beat and then I'm going to break it down step by step. Yeah, that's the beat we're going to be breaking down this week, and let's just jump into FL Studio and start breaking it down. Alright, so to start off, I grabbed the Black Forest Acoustic Grand preset from Analog Lab, and it's just a typical grand piano. So to start the chord progression off, we have this G minor 7th chord. It's really simple, I just made it by skipping every other note, so I just did this. And that's your G minor 7th chord. And then I moved down to the F and I made an F minor triad and I added an additional note here just so it would be the same as that. And then I went down to D and I made a D minor triad and I just duplicated the D up an octave so it would be the same as these two chords. And then here I just made a D sharp major 7th chord. And then for the second half of the chord progression I tried to change it up a bit, so we still have the same G minor 7th chord, but instead of having another F minor passing chord, I went down to G and I made a G minor chord. It's the same chord that I grabbed from over here. And then I went up to D sharp and I made that same D sharp major 7th chord, and then I have the F minor chord here at the end resolving the melody. So without any effects, this is what the chord progression sounds like. So it's a super emotional sounding chord progression. In terms of effects, I went to the mixer channel and I added an EQ cutting out some of the lows and a bunch of the highs. Then I added an RC20 and I just turned down the noise and the wobble and kept the distortion on. And then I went to Valhalla Supermassive and added a Cirrus minor play preset. And then I added another EQ cutting out some of the lows, some of the high mids, and some of the highs. And basically my thought process behind putting these effects on the piano is I was just trying to put effects on that would help wash out the piano as much as possible. So to do that, I did the EQ and the reverb and then another EQ just to clean it up a bit. From there I went back into Analog Lab and I went to Kavi's Confessions 2 bank and grabbed the drunk texting preset, which is just like a key mixed with a pad, and I just copied the exact same chord progression from the piano into it, and I didn't even add any effects to it besides cutting out some of the lows with an EQ. So I'm just going to play the chord progression for you guys. From there I grabbed the Moog Hell sub bass from Kavi's Main Stash Volume 1 Analog Lab Bank, and I went to the piano roll and just laid down this bass line following the root note of each chord, but I added a couple of passing notes just to help transition between chords. And this is what the bass line sounds like. Then I went back into Kavi's Main Stash Volume 1 kit and I grabbed the Save Your Tears pad. Then I went to the piano roll and I kind of used the pad as a lead and I just laid down this little melody with it. Next I went to Loner's Technicolor Analog Lab Bank and I grabbed this Caretaker pad, and I just went back into the piano roll and I took the chords from the main chord progression and I chopped them up so that they were really short and only hit where the snare hits, just to add some extra texture to the melody. And for effects I only added an EQ cutting out some of the low end, so I'm just going to play the pad with the EQ on it. Then I went back into Loner's Technicolor Bank and I grabbed this Love Is in the Air arpeggio, and I just placed a single note on G that only comes in every 4 bars, and this is what it sounds like. And for effects on that, I just put Valhalla's Supermassive Cirrus Minor Play preset just to wash it out a bit. And then I went to Idawa's Dawnlight Analog Lab Bank and I just grabbed this Nebula Swirls arpeggio, and again I just laid down some random notes that were in the scale just to add some extra texture to the beat, and this is what this sounds like. And then I went to Splice and I found this ambient vocal chop and I just placed it in the background of the mix to add some extra texture to the melody. For effects on it, I just did an EQ and a fruity chorus, so nothing too crazy, and this is what the vocal chop sounds like. So it was originally in the key of B minor, but I just pitched it down 400 cents so it would be in the key of the rest of the instruments. And then I also add this vocal riser that comes in every 8 bars, and I played around with the pitch so that it would be in key with the rest of the beat. And I also add this fruity delay automation clip that comes in. As you can see, like, it goes to 100% when the riser ends, just so that like the riser continues to play, if that makes sense. Like, it just helps with the transition from one part of the beat to another. This is what the riser sounds like. Yeah, that's it for the melody breakdown. Now let's move on to the drums. So to start the drums off, I grabbed the Sneaky Link 808 from Kavi's Elements of R&B kit, and I just laid down this simple 808 pattern following the root note of each chord, and this is what it sounds like. Yeah, it's a super simple 808 pattern. I mainly just want to establish a bit of bounce while keeping it simple at the same time. After that, I layered the 808 with this kick. Now in terms of percussion, I knew for the first half of the beat I wanted to use a tom instead of a clap or a snare, so I just went to Kavi's OVO mini kit and I grabbed this 40 baby tom and I just laid it down on the 3 wherever clap would hit. Now I ended up putting some effects on the tom just to help like wash it out a bit, because it kind of had like a clickier sound to it. So that's what the tom originally sounded like, and I wanted to wash it out a bit. So to do that, I went to the mixer channel, grabbed Fruity Reverb 2, and just turned up the wet a bit, turned up the size a bit, and then I added a Fruity Love filter, just a default preset, and then I added an EQ, just taking out this particular frequency that was like really sticking out. So I wanted to add like a very spacey ambient hi-hat for the verse, so I grabbed this hi-hat and I just laid down like this very spacey pattern with it. I tried to use it very sparingly, and I went to the mixer channel and I actually added a fruity delay, halftime on 2x mode, 1/2 loop, and then some EQs cutting out some lows and highs from it, just to add as sort of like a background texture instead of like a prominent hi-hat you would hear in like a trap beat. So that's what the hi-hat sounds like with all the effects on it, and then I'll play it dry for you guys. As you can hear, the effects do a lot to the hi-hat, so I liked how it sounded with the effects on it, so I just kept it like that. So as you guys can see, at bar 33 I added a marker that says verse, and for this part of the beat I switched up the drums and tried to make them a bit speedier and a bit like more like a rap, like R&B hybrid type beat, like something you'd hear like Tory Lanez or Drake spitting bars on. So in order to do that, I went to the piano roll and I just laid down like a typical 1/4 beat hi-hat pattern, and then I went to the magnet tool to 1/3 step and I add some rolls here and there just to add some extra bounce to it. And then I did the same thing with 1/6 step, so I would just click on one of these notes and I would just take the paintbrush and drag it out, and then I would just play around with the velocity a bit. This is what the hi-hats sound like with no effects on them. And I ended up adding some effects to these hi-hats too. So I went to another halftime and I did 2 times 1 bar, except I played around with the band so it was only like halftime in the top frequencies of it. And then I add an EQ cutting out a bunch of the lows and just a little bit of the highs. And this is what the hi-hat pattern sounds like with all the effects on it. So yeah, with the halftime on it, definitely adds that like PartyNextDoor R&B bounce to it. So I was really happy with how that sounded. And then the last thing I did to the drums is just replace the tom with a snare for the second half of the verse. And then the only other thing that I did to the beat is I just add this love filter, which I do in pretty much every one of my beats and every one of my videos. So I just went to the master channel, I added my soft clippers like always, I added fruity love filter, and I right clicked right here, went to create automation clip, and then I just had it fade in for the intro and then fade back out for the hook. And then I did the same thing for like the bridge outro section. Yeah, that's it for the beat breakdown. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe because it helps me out a lot. We're so close to hitting 1,000 subs, so if we could do that before the end of the year, I would really appreciate it, guys. Let me know down in the comments if you guys want the link to the sample. I can upload to the Dropbox for you. But yeah, that's it for this week's video. I'm gonna let the beat play out for you guys now, and I'll see you guys in the next one.